So before we proceed to the next chapter, we need to just touch upon something very important about the previous chapter. In fact, the most important question of life. It is existence and consciousness. So there is the little story of the famous poet T.S. Eliot. So he had gone to the countryside and he was enjoying the wonderful atmosphere. And then it began to pour, and he knocks at a farmer's cottage because he wanted to take shelter for some time. So when he knocked the door and he opened, and quite naturally he asked, "Who are you? Where are you coming from? Where are you going?" And he answered, and he said, "Okay, come in and you can rest for some time." But whole night he kept thinking about these questions. Who am I? Where am I coming from? Where am I going? And we may add that depending on the answer that we give to these fundamental questions, will be the value and the quality of a life. So why is it that we experience life in one way, experience life in different way? This is one of the big mysteries that we all grapple with. So, in today, philosophers and scientists both are discussing this as a hard problem. And they use very picturesque term, hard problem of consciousness. So, what really is the hard problem? It's very simple. All that it implies is that if you put rice and dal and vegetables and little bit of ghee and salt and all these ingredients in a cooking pot and put it on the fire, I must have missed out some ingredients. Of course, the most important is the person who puts his love or her love into it. And at the end of it, you take out its khichdi. So it is understandable. Why? Because these were the ingredients, they went through a process, and what came out is khichdi. Very simple. No big deal about it. But supposing if I put some of these ingredients, the same ingredient, what comes out is rasmalai or rasgulla. Then it will be a very difficult thing to explain. It will look like magic. And imagine if I put nothing into it, or just I put something random here and there, whatever I feel like I put. And what comes out is a celestial khichdi. Then again it will be a big problem. So the hard problem of consciousness, basically in simple terms, implies the explanatory gap. So explanatory gap means we are trying to explain something on the basis of something else which doesn't quite explain it. For example, let's take one example that scientists 100 years back said, one day we will explain life. After 100 years, they declared we have explained life. How they explain life? Genes, heredity, DNA, etc., etc. Has it been explained? No, it has just simply described the process of life. Life may take other forms, other ways to express itself. And does it really explain life? Am I just a bundle of DNA and chromosomes and just try to say, you Mr. Chromosome Y and Mr. Chromosome X and Mr. Chromosome God knows, all A, B, C, D, everything we can say. There is something about life which cannot be explained by all these things. These are processes. But these processes do not explain our conscious experience of life. Similarly, when it comes to consciousness, it is explained in a similar way, or it used to be so. The explanation was that it's because of brain activity, neuronal activity. This was the way at least my enthusiasm for psychiatry came down like this. The only reason I wanted to go is that, I learn about human mind. And when I said that, I am interested in yoga, they said, don't talk about yoga, spirituality, all that here. I say, so, why? Because it is brain activity, neuronal activity. Now imagine. And there are people who still believe it, though it's outdated, because 25 years back, there was a famous bet that two brain scientists had taken. Very well-known debate. Many people may be aware. Christopher and Chalmers and They decided after 25 years, one of them said that after 25 years, we'll be able to explain consciousness purely on the basis of matter. They took a bet, and Chalmers said, no, it's not possible. So 25 years just recently they finished, and obviously they couldn't explain anything. So what is the explanation? Brain produces certain currents, electrical activity, and therefore consciousness is generated. Now look at the explanatory gap. The neurons themselves are not conscious. If you just cut the brain by giving anesthesia, the neurons don't experience anything. Actually, it's very interesting. It doesn't, because the brain itself doesn't have pain sensation to cut. It responds to certain other things, whatever is necessary for it to defend itself. But as such, it doesn't. It is not conscious. But based on that activity, we are conscious. That is obviously a big explanatory gap. To take another example, somebody who observes someone typing on a computer board and letters are coming. So if he draws a conclusion, the reason why such intelligent poem or things are being written flashing on the computer board can all be explained by the magic keyboard, where the things go tuck, 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 and there is all this being produced. But can we explain it only on that basis? We have to take into account there is someone behind who knows the language. He is using these keys purposefully, not randomly. And therefore a meaningful sentence is being produced. It's so amazing. If you really look at life that way, it fills with wonder. At this point of time, we are listening, I'm speaking, hearing, understanding, all this is going on together. So many billions of neurons are being fired in each one's brain. And it is producing different kinds of understanding, different kinds of questions. It's not like it's the same understanding, though the brain is essentially the same. How does this take place? What is it that intervenes, as it were, or flows in the current of the brain? What is it that flows somewhere and we have the experience of something? And it applies at every level. We cannot explain even perception. Why? Because when I look at something, what am I receiving? Nothing but photons from the object which are entering my eyes. And then they strike a portion of the brain. And I have the image of a tree. How does it happen? So this is the big question, hard problem of consciousness. And science has been unable to address it because of two basic problems. One is it has assumed that consciousness is produced by the brain. It's an assumption. You cannot explain by that. The second assumption is consciousness is equal to minds, our mental consciousness, the way the mind experiences, the human being's experience. That's the definition of consciousness. So many fallacies. Even among human beings, people experience life so differently. Look at a simple thing like the Kisan Andolan going on. Now, there are same thing. I am experiencing it another way. The fellow out there is experiencing another way. The layman is experiencing another way. The political parties, the opposition, all of them are experiencing it in very different ways. And all believe they are right. That is the big problem, even in human relationship, because when there are, it has implications, not a philosophical problem. It's the problem of everyday life. A person who thinks, feels in a certain way, innocently believes others must be thinking, feeling in the same way. And when he discovers it is not quite the same, he tries to convince them. And if he cannot convince them, he takes one of the two positions. One is a more logical, sane position. We agree to disagree. The other is he increases the force. Finally, he issues a fatwa. Gone. If you don't behave my way, if you don't understand life my way, you have no right to exist. Existence cannot be other than. So, It's a problem that we encounter everyday life. If I don't understand consciousness, if I don't know how to shift it, if at all, if I don't know how to change it, if I don't know how to expand it, I can do nothing. I am just like a bird in a cage. This another example. A bird in the cage doesn't know it can fly. It has wings, but it doesn't know it can fly. And it is so much bound to that, especially parrots, sweet little birds, and they are happy with the, mirchi, that chili you give them, or chana, gram that you give them. They're very happy. And they will say whatever you tell them. They are perfect example of how mere chanting a mantra is not enough. They will chant whatever mantra you tell them. But look at it. You open the door. I have actually seen it in my house. There were two parrots. They just remain there. They just remain there. They are meant to fly, enjoy the tree, do so much more. Why? Because something in them binds them. So that's why in any, Sri Aurobindo used the word science of consciousness. In any, yoga or life or whatever we want to understand, the only way we can understand it is in terms of consciousness. A person is like this. Why? Because he has this consciousness. Even in a daytime, we experience different levels of consciousness. When we wake up, we are half drowsy. I mean, most of us. And if at that time you suddenly tell a person, please solve this complex mathematical problem, even if he is a genius, he may just say, look, he'll be stunned for some time. Average person. Of course, a person who enjoys mathematics will say, come, this is what I love to do. Similarly, when a person is in sleep, it's a different consciousness. When we are dreaming, it's a totally different consciousness with different landscape altogether. And when he wakes up, he freshens up, it's a different person. When he goes to the office, it's a different person. All through the day, he is as if a multiple person who is adjusting. But you ask him, are you many people? He says, no, please. See my Aadhaar card, I am the same person. Aadhaar card is defining just your outer name and this. It does not, and yet this is a truth. And the more complex we become through evolution, the more personalities we put forth. Sri Aurobindo says that this is one of the challenges of yoga. Because the more we are evolved, the more number of personalities emerge out of us. And it's so difficult to integrate them. So, one of the fundamental things to be understood is consciousness. And we have seen the materialist doesn't really have an answer to it. He's trying. It's okay that one day I will explain. Like 100 years back he said, I can explain life. But even if you describe the precise material processes and the point of brain, still you won't be able to explain. Because you have described the processes, not the experience. How these processes translate into that particular experience. Experience of feeling something, thinking something. Experience of desiring, wishing, willing. So many experiences. How do we experience? So that is what consciousness. This is one way to understand. Another way is consciousness. From the basic stuff of consciousness, we have the purpose. So, how do we understand purpose? And this purpose is not just very high abstract purpose. Even in animals, there is a purpose. They may not give a lecture on the purpose of life. But if you were to ask a, lion, he will say, I have a purpose of life. What is your purpose? He will say, roti, kapda or makan. Animals understand only that much purpose. And probably, unlike human beings, it will be grateful to the divine that, he has given me a purpose. But human beings will rebel and revolt. There is a difference. But still he will say, that's my purpose of living. That's a great purpose. And if you add some religion to it, still, the purpose will be the same, but he will put in that tadka of religion. There is the story of a priest who was suddenly pinned down by a bear. And he was about to eat him. And the priest said, wait, wait, wait. I am going to, he put the cross and said, I am going to baptize you. Now you become a Christian. So Christian is not supposed to harm somebody, no? Ideally. So the bear remained silent. He started praying. And after that prayer he said, Lord, thank you for the meal, for the bread that you have given me. Purpose is still to eat. It doesn't matter. He has only added because consciousness has not changed. So it is the fundamental thing. That's how Sri Aurobindo defines yoga. Same mistake we do with yoga. We see activities. Oh, that person meditates for so long. Oh, he is sitting at the samadhi for 2 hours. Oh, he is doing this. He is chanting. He is reading all the books. He is giving lectures. He is writing. He is, God knows. But none of these things define or describe yoga. Yoga is a change of consciousness. If the consciousness changes by whatever means, doesn't matter, it is yoga. If it doesn't change, whatever we may be doing, we may look like a yogi, which is of course the easiest of things, but we are not in a yoganist avastha. So this is where the study of consciousness and the science of consciousness is so important. So what does Sri Aurobindo bring to us? And of course, it is there in our spiritual teachings. First is that there are different layers of consciousness, one behind the another. For instance, there is the waking, dream, and the sleep state. They are not one after another, they are together. For instance, while this talk is going on, some may be alert, awake, some may be in their dream world, or simultaneously in the dream world, some may be live divine, dozing, all of them going on together. So in all my classes, I used to tell my students, I'm Air Force days, you can sleep, but please don't snore. Have a conscious sleep, non-snoring sleep. So this is the 3 states, but these 3 states are not just about us. Universe itself has layers behind layers, veils behind veils. There is this outer material universe which is the waking state. We can connect with it in our waking state. But there is behind this material tangible universe multiverses, which is where the dream worlds come in. What are the dream worlds? Why they are called like that? Creation is descending through them before entering into the outer material world. When it is in the material world, we see it. But where it goes, where does it come from? We don't know. People just say matter resolves into energy at one point of time. The stars we see today, it's so fascinating sometimes just to think about these things. The star that I am seeing today is probably dead. Definitely dead in all likelihood. The light is reaching my eyes, God knows how many million years later. And there are stars in the sky which I cannot see, which are very bright, much brighter than the stars. The light has not yet reached my eye. So fascinating this life can be when we look at it like that. So when we try to understand this is the waking world, but where did the stars vanish? Where do they come from? Every moment, billions of stars are entering into the arena of space. Billions are going back. And each star, just imagine, some of them more powerful than our suns. It can be a meditation. Sri Aurobindo actually describes it as a meditation. Look towards the sky and see in that boundlessness. Stars, sun, and where are they from? Who has brought them into existence? And then he, of course, does it very beautifully. That not only these stars drifting in the sky, he is near us. Look in the flower, in the pattern and bloom of the flower, he is woven in the luminous net of the stars he is caught. Then he comes nearer. He says, look yonder, that old man. Do you see God walking in him? Look here, this child, in the laughter of boy, in the strength of a man, in the beauty of woman, in the laughter of boy, in the blush of a girl. Do we see the divine in all this? And then he says, he is still nearer. He is in you. And then he says, he is you. What a powerful state. How liberating this whole study can be. Easy, one will never feel alone. So there is this inner world. We come in contact with this inner world sometimes during daytime, sometimes in our sleep, sometimes in a yoga nidra, when we actually withdraw from the surface consciousness. And this inner world is magic. In a state of hypnosis, by the power of this inner world, we can completely alter the way we respond to things. Not only by hypnosis, I have seen in some of my clients, patients, how they can stay without hunger, thirst for days. And in a catatonic state, they will hold the hand up. For hours, they will stay in that state. It's something to learn how they are doing it. Because they are withdrawn into another world altogether. That world is very real to them. Unfortunately, a dark world. There are dark worlds and luminous worlds. So there are worlds behind this material, tangible world. And all these have been brought into existence by consciousness. So there is the waking consciousness, the Chatushpad Brahman of the Mandukya, and there is the dream or Swapna Jagat. Some people have Swapna Samadhi, that's how. Swapna Samadhi is when we have entered into these worlds and gone right to its core. It is still savikalp, in the sense there is a possibility of manifesting things that are within. And actually, even in any creative person, before creating something, or nobody really creates, there is only one creator. But one withdraws into some kind of an inner reverie, and then something bursts out. And when it bursts out, then we will see. Imagine a poet musing on a great poem. People seeing him may think, what is he doing? Because he is doing nothing actually. And if they asked him, what are you doing? He would say, I am composing a poem. How would they believe it till the poem comes into existence? That's how when people came and asked Sri Aurobindo, what are you doing? Because he had left the political field and come to Pondicherry. He paused for a while and then he said, well, nothing. Because who would understand what he is doing? Well, nothing. And then they wanted him to come back and join the Congress. And for Sri Aurobindo, it was very clear, he had himself broken it. So it was very clear, its destiny was written. And he said, if I enter into politics, it will be so different that nobody will understand me. Therefore, he didn't go back into it. Not that he put anything as a taboo, but he said, today's politics is so dark that if I were to enter, nobody will even understand, let alone follow. So, there is this dream worlds rather. But where do this dream state of consciousness resolve itself into? It resolves into a still deeper world. Pragya, Prashtato Purano, Pragya, that state in which it is fully in a state of superconscient light. Nothing in the dream world, it has begun to manifest, like thoughts entering us, feelings entering us, will impelling us, desires entering us. We become conscious when they enter us. But where were they before coming? In the cosmic consciousness. But before the cosmos. So they are all densely packed in a mass of superconscient light. All wisdom. It's a very beautiful subject, but not going into that. So in that state, Pragya, that's how, Shiva holds all the seeds within him and casts it forth into creation. So from there, but what is beyond it? So the Indian mystics who went way beyond, they said, no, brain activity will come to. Let's first explore. If we withdraw from the surface, what do we discover? So they went into the subjective being and then they discovered the Pragya. They said, what is beyond it? Turiya, that which transcends all these three. The Supreme Being, and He contains all these in Himself, or herself, or itself. And then they said, no. Where did that come from? He come from. So they even went on to speak of a non-being, beyond the being. Then of course it stopped. That's how the Nasadya Sutra in Rig Veda, which has been grossly misunderstood. It has nothing to do with atheism, nothing to do even with agnosticism. And we see this all over philosophical. Oh, in India, Nasadya Sutra, it is simply you cannot define it. Nasad, you can't define it as Sad, you cannot even define it as Asad. There is no way you can define. By define, you limit it. But this is how they explode. And they also explode that there is a ranges of consciousness climbing like a ladder from below upward. Below is easy for us to understand. When we are in mental consciousness, then we are ready to do problem solving. When we are in vital consciousness, we are the problem that somebody else has to solve. See, the same person, when he flips into the animal consciousness, and you say, why are you behaving like a jackal? Why are you behaving? They will all feel bad. We should never say you are behaving like a dog. And I take strong objection. They are such lovely creatures. So, but we say, no, he's behaving like he's a snake. We use these words. Why? Because the consciousness can come down from the human mental consciousness into an animal subhuman type. It can go still further from the animal. We can become like jad, difficult to move, like matter, block of stone. We use this word. Have you become like a block of stone? When there is intense crisis, sometimes we become jad because that's the only way we can absorb or face it. This is also a saying, jadamati hot sujan. Jadamati. Intelligence which is unable to understand anything. And yet it has the potential to know everything. So we ourselves can experience the stone-like layer or the material consciousness. We can enter into physical consciousness when everything becomes dull, obscure. We can play with it. It's like a gymnasium. One is in physical consciousness. One doesn't feel like moving, doing anything. Of course, here we say that, your physical consciousness is being transformed. So it has come to the surface. There is a truth in that, but that apart. Because sudden attacks, not at night when we enter into the inert ways. Similarly, there is a vital, animal-like consciousness. And then there is a mental consciousness. Then, is there something beyond? We also experience it. Sometimes in normal life, the phenomena of genius. What is the phenomena of genius? Something beyond the mind. Nature has overshot itself beyond what it has created in the human mold. And this genius creates another kind of disorder in the human consciousness because genius doesn't act according to the human understanding, human standards. Nothing applies to it. And that's why they're called as crackpots. Because this pot is actually cracked. You can't have something from above if the pot is strong. This pot has cracked. Thanks to the crack, that some light can come in. And it first upsets the humanity of the genius himself. And then it can have its own impact on the life of others. At one place, Mother says, I am seeing what a confusion can come because of the supramental consciousness. She says, imagine these beings with immense power, development. They won't have human standards. Try you apply, they won't apply. Now imagine when they move around in the world, what will they be understood? The world may even feel angry. It may even try to kill them, destroy them. All this she has foreseen, that they have to be protected. Because the world won't understand these beings. They'll be so different. So while all this is fine, Superman and supramental, because that consciousness is so different from human, just as an animal tries to understand the human. Look at how cats and dogs look at us, as if we are gods. Thank God they don't know that we are worse than them in many ways. But they look at us. Why? Because of power, capacity. So they look at us like gods. Now when something transcends, they don't understand us. They almost have an adoration. That's how the mother describes. They have an adoration for human beings, admiration. Even a lion, they are afraid of human beings. That Rudyard Kipling's, on that the movie was made, Jungle Book, where it's so beautifully described. The animals say that we want, there is something about this human being that is very powerful. We want that. They use the word that Agni Fool because they see the fire. It's not just the outer fire. There's something in the human eyes which even animals, that's why even a snake, if you look into the eyes, he sees something is there inside which he knows it's a different creature. Even a lion, of course, it doesn't mean start playing. Go near, yes, we learned that, I can look into your eyes. There are people who do that, by the way. So this is beyond human, there are ranges of consciousness which mystics experience. But what is the condition? To detach ourselves from the surface consciousness. Then we can play around with it. Surface consciousness binds us to a fixed form and a fixed formula. Fixed form, I am Mr. So and so. Fixed formula, whatever my outer mind is conditioned. Naturally, there can be no yoga with that. Unless we detach, then consciousness becomes free, it can expand, rise, all this. And then there is a third way that Sri Aurobindo explains. Everything can be understood in this world based on consciousness. Every human being can be understood. He is or she is what he or she is because of consciousness. How to do things better? Not by scolding, not by reason, try it. See, people try it and they fail. But by change of consciousness. That's what yoga is meant to bring. So there is the surface consciousness. Behind it is the inner consciousness. Behind it, the inmost consciousness. There is the environing consciousness, which is because of the people around and the atmosphere around. We can feel it. You go to certain places, they'll feel haunted. Go to certain places, the environing consciousness is such. Sri Aurobindo himself says that in the ashram you have two atmospheres, the human and the divine. If you get too much into the human, you may lose track. So beautifully, Ch.10 said, Mother, if people look at us, they won't want to stay here. If they look at you, they will never want to go from here. So all this is a play of consciousness. And even consciousness makes us aware of who I am. So without consciousness, even though existence is there, it is inert. Now we understand why Shiva is lying like a shav. It is Kali who makes him come alive. Shava becomes Shiva. Otherwise he is inert below her feet. Without consciousness, even the pure existent cannot know itself. That's the Divine Mother. Without her grace, that's what Sri Aurobindo says. She brings out Satchidanand. Without consciousness, we can understand nothing because consciousness is knowledge plus power. Implicit within knowing. See, let's take this example. When somebody is outwardly unconscious, how do we say he is unconscious? We say we have given anesthesia. But what is the criteria? Because there are no reaction. If I do pain sensation, he does not react. Is there a way to know whether inwardly he is aware or not? No. He may be having a nice dream for all you know. We all know. I mean, this is the experience we all undergo. I have undergone. I was having such a nice dream. In fact, of mother. So, that's a different experience. But outwardly, now he is unconscious. What does it mean? The consciousness is not operating in the outer field. Like in a state of deep sleep. Are we unconscious? No, we are still conscious within. That's how we dream. So, this is the magic word which is actually going to be the word of the future. We cannot understand science, we cannot understand psychology, we cannot understand human nature, we cannot understand the universe, we cannot understand God, we cannot understand ourselves without consciousness. Consciousness is the light that makes us aware of anything. As is the consciousness, so is the awareness. As is the awareness, so is the response. And just one small example and then we'll read a little thing. It's like the light of intelligence. If somebody from behind suddenly hits me or pushes me, the natural reaction is, oh my God. When we turn back and see it's my friend, oh, when did you come? See, that little change changes our reaction. So, imagine living in a world where we see all as divine beings. How will we respond? Even when we respond according to the true law of things, which will come later, which will come on the chapter on supermind. Take it up. But there will not be any enmity because there is no other. Enmity, hatred will be impossible. Therefore, if we want to create human unity, it cannot, 1,000 times cannot be done without change of consciousness. We may have oneness programs, we may have nice reading, we may have nice talks, it will do nothing if consciousness doesn't change. That's why Ch. 10 says it can only be done when we have discovered the divine self within. All other means maybe okay, it's good to, children talk about good things, big things. We want unity. And then people fight. As mother said, 3 people who started. Shall I not? Okay, the world union. And then the mother says, they 3 are fighting with each other. You want to create world union? 3 of you are fighting with each other. World unity, after a lecture of world unity, the professor came home and then fought with his wife because the dinner was not according to his taste. This is the state of humanity. So, the focus should be on change of consciousness. And that's where we'll just read a couple of passages. Page 95 on conscious force. Ch. 10 describes all the many worlds, and consciousness is involved in everything. But yet you cannot see it. Consciousness will make you aware of itself. There is no other way. Consciousness has built the brain and the faculties for experiencing this world. Otherwise we cannot. And this idea of brain, imagine there are plants, they don't have a brain, but they are conscious at their own level. That's what we were yesterday talking about. Everything, metals are conscious, everything, but in their own way, in their own limited way. Every animal is conscious in its own way for its own purposes. Not more, not less. So, in us we are conscious in a human way. For us there is brain. Plants don't have a brain. So, consciousness is not dependent on brain activity. But brain is an instrument through which it can express itself. It's like one may have music inside, but unless you have a good voice, we are all bathroom singers. Because this is missing, the instrument is missing. So brain is an instrument, consciousness is evolved to express itself in a certain bandwidth. Now, as this instrument will evolve newer instruments, even the brain, it will undergo the transformation. And simplest way to help its transformation is to read Ch. 10 every day. The mother uses this word. She says, every day you must read a little. Then she says that don't try to understand. Because how can we understand? It has come from what levels? But she says after some time you will see that the understanding will come. Why? Because consciousness from the words has entered into consciousness of the one who is the reader. And one day it will bear fruits and flowers. And then she says something very interesting. It will create new brain cells for the understanding if need be. Who doesn't want new brain cells? Especially if with these new brain cells, the higher understanding can come. So brain has to undergo that transformation. Every organ has to undergo. Heart cannot. Untransformed heart begins to race. And Ch. 10 says that there is a possibility when the heartbeat stops, lungs stop, you continue to live. Because these are instruments on which presently we depend. But it's not necessary that we will depend on them forever. All his experiences. So he says there is no reason to suppose that the gamut of life and consciousness fails and stops short in that which seems to us purely material. The development of recent research and thought seems to point to a sort of obscure beginning of life and perhaps a sort of inert or suppressed consciousness in the metal and in the earth and in other inanimate forms. So since we don't want to prolong this, how life is immersed. It's so amazing. from a kind of primal soup, suddenly out of it. None of these genes explain life. All that they tell us is the process. That's it. Necessarily, in such a view, the word consciousness changes its meaning. It is no longer synonymous with mentality, but indicates a self aware force of existence, of which mentality is a middle term. Below mentality, it sinks into vital and material movement, which are for us subconscient. Above it rises into the supramental, which is for us the superconscient. But in all, it is one and the same thing organizing itself differently. It builds forms because it's not just awareness or knowledge, it is also power. That's what we have seen. Knowledge and will go together. The moment I get an input, automatically there is a choice to act, not to act this way, that way. They are all implied within it. Of course, you can withdraw completely from Prakriti and enter into that. But still it is implied. Why? Because you have taken a conscious choice of withdrawing. That's why Sri Aurobindo says, none can escape. Even when the Purusha withdraws, she sleeps upon his breast. Anytime she can wake up. Still it is a choice that I will be a witness. I will not react. I will not respond. I will withdraw into the inmost substance of self. Can't help it. That's the story of Shringi Rishi. Goes around. When Shiva comes, gets married, he says, this is not the Shiva that I knew. Many people had this problem. Mother has come. Why should Parvati, why this is not correct, this something is wrong, we have our own little moral judgments. So Shiva and Parvati, they give a nice little satsang to all those who are around. And then they take a parikrama, go around them. Shringi Rishi doesn't want. Why? Because Shiva and Parvati are together. If he takes a parikrama, he have to go around both. And he does not acknowledge Parvati. So Shiva says, what happened to you? He says, no, you are complete in yourself. There is no need of Parvati. So Shiva tries to tell him. But he doesn't want to understand. So he takes the form of a little keet, one little insect, and he goes around Shiva's jata, ignoring Parvati. So Parvati, mother says, I see you don't feel any need of me. Therefore I am withdrawing myself from you. He collapses into nothingness. He can't do even yoga. He is helpless in that state. Purusha and Prakriti, how much ever we may say Prakriti is this or that, can we do yoga without the help from Prakriti? Can we forcibly fight her? Even when we make a choice, she has to say, okay. That's how they say, even when ultimately the divine Maya, Mahamaya allows you to pass beyond, she allows. If she doesn't allow, you can't pass beyond. So, this he explains to us, but in the end he takes up one objection which nobody has taken. We can see that everything in this universe, there is an intelligent operation. There is no doubt about it. There is not just randomness, there is a harmony, there is an order till man comes. And till man becomes Harvard graduate. Till then, order, harmony is there. Village life was relatively simpler, not that we can go back to it. But then the more his mental ego develops, the more disorder comes. It's a passage, all that will come later. But then, there's so much of waste. How can self-aware, supreme intelligence create this wasteful process? So this is a beautiful passage, which will make us feel very comfortable. Because people say, we have wasted our life, we have wasted our life. So page 96. But what right have we to assume consciousness as the just description of this force? For consciousness implies some kind of intelligence, purposefulness, self-knowledge, even though they may not take the forms habitual to our mentality. Even from this point of view, everything supports rather than contradicts the idea of universal conscious force. The only argument against a conscious and intelligent source for this purposeful work, this work of intelligence, of selection, adaptation, and seeking, is that large element in nature's operations to which we give the name of waste. This is the objection which people raise. Biologists raise this objection. I had a big discussion with someone long back. No. You see, if it is so intelligent and purposeful, why so many mutations, errors, and then something emerges? Of course, I explained the way Ch.10 has explained. All these approximations are part of the process. Each failure is a learning, and each learning paves the way towards the future success. Each approximation is nearing the goal, because that's how we grow. And as we grow in consciousness, now we are ready to hit the target. There are several ways of explaining, but this is one of them. So now Ch.10 says, but obviously that is an objection based on the limitations of a human intellect, which seeks to impose its own particular rationality, good enough for limited human ends, for the general operations of the world force. We see only part of nature's purpose, and all that does not subserve that part we call waste. We tell our children, you are wasting your life. If we have grandparent alive, they will say, shall I tell him what you were doing when you were 18? Through all this waste, you have reached where you have reached. He is doing his share of waste. But still waste is there. In food, everything, there is a waste. So Ch.10 says, human action is full of an apparent waste, so appearing from the individual point of view, which yet, we may be sure, subserves well enough the large and universal purpose of things. Doesn't it serve waste through the food? Yet gets recycled. And if we, for a moment, don't have jugupsa shrinking, what happens to this human waste? It gets into the mud, makes the soil fertile, seed draws its energy from it, grows into a plant, and we eat something of that plant. Is it true or not true? So Indians knew this idea, and therefore we used to go in nature, nature's call. Because this was understood that there is no real waste. Everything that seems wasted yet serves a purpose. Even our errors and imperfections. There's a beautiful line in Savitri. One who has made this world is ever its Lord. Our errors are his steps upon the way. He works through the fierce vicissitudes of our soils. He works through the hard breath of battle and toil. He works through our sins, our sorrows, and our tears. Whatever the appearance we must bear, whatever our strong ills and present fate, when nothing we can see but drift and bail, a mighty guidance leads us still through all. It looks waste, because we cannot understand the great cosmic purpose, and we cannot see how it is really helping. Look how people must have told Dashrath, what a king, what a Kekai, what a mother. Wish Rama had become king, then only we would have had instantaneous Ram Rajya. Wasteful 14 years, but when the Ramayana is complete, actually those 14 years are the real life of Rama, without which it will look so dull and insignificant. So this idea of waste is a very limited human idea. Again, it serves its limited purpose. Like, we can't imagine that earth is moving at a fast speed and walk. We cannot, we'll trip. So we walk as if earth is stable. That's all right. As if it is flat, it's all right. But if we fly a plane thinking it is, flat, then there will be a problem. We have to reset. The navigation system has to constantly pick the data, the signals, and reset itself. So what we call as waste, that part of our intention which we can detect Nature gets done surely enough in spite of, perhaps really by virtue of her apparent waste. We may well trust to her in the rest which we do not yet detect. For the force that builds the worlds is a conscious force. The existence which manifests itself in them is conscious being, and a perfect emergence of its potentialities in form is the sole object which we can rationally conceive for its manifestation of this world of forms. So, conscious being, and with that we can stop. People say God is there or not very simply. If an existence which is aware of itself, by definition it's a being. How do I know I exist? I know it. I'm aware of myself. Therefore, I'm a being. My body will change, my Aadhaar card may change, everything may change. But I'll continue. That's the great difference between the Rene Descartes' idea, I think, therefore I am. What does the Indian mystic has to say to it? I am whether I think or I don't think. So we'll stop here and we'll start the delight of existence, the problem, after 10 minutes.